Donald Trump and his Department of Justice are going ballistic on and attacking a Trump-appointed judge, Judge Novak. In a prior order we covered here on the MeidasTouch network, Judge Novak, who presides in the Eastern District of Virginia, responded to an indictment where Lindsey Halligan is still referring to herself as the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, even though another federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia, Judge Curry, disqualified Lindsey Halligan from another case involving James Comey and Letitia James, but more broadly said that Lindsey Halligan was not lawfully appointed and that she needed to go. And Lindsey Halligan said, well, I guess that just means from this case, but I'm still going to call myself the United States Attorney, the top federal prosecutor for the Eastern District of Virginia in every other case, which you're not allowed to do. So Judge Novak, a Trump-appointed judge, a right-wing judge, says, who the hell do you think you are? I'm paraphrasing it, but you were disqualified. If you are unlawfully representing yourself as the Eastern District of Virginia's top attorney, the top federal prosecutor in one case, that means you're doing it in all cases, and you're going to be tainting all cases. So on his own, which is called sua sponte, on his own initiative, SUA space SPONTE is Latin term, sua sponte, the federal judge says to Lindsey Halligan, please submit a filing explaining why what you're doing is not deceit or misrepresentation under the state bar rules, and explain why I shouldn't refer you to the state bar authorities of Virginia for disciplinary action because you are falsely representing you are a title that you are not. What are you doing here? And so in a normal world, first off, Lindsey Halligan would never be appointed any position. She's never been a federal prosecutor, yet alone the top position. Also, if you were unlawfully representing yourself to be something that you're not, and a judge ruled that way in another case, you would withdraw and you would be immediately fired and disciplined by the Department of Justice, but not this rogue Trump criminal Department of Justice. So they responded, and it was Halligan, Todd Blanche, and Pam Bondi. Bondi's the Attorney General. Todd Blanche is the number 2 at the DOJ, the Deputy Attorney General, and Halligan. They all respond, and they attack Judge Novak. And they say that, Novak, you are engaged in a gross abuse of power. And so here's the brief that they filed in response to Novak saying, explain why you're misrepresenting who you are. They accuse Novak of violating the law. Here's what they write. In violation of the rules of criminal procedure and the principle of party presentation, the court has initiated a sua sponte inquisition into whether it should strike Ms. Halligan's title from the government's signature block. The order launching the quest reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of Judge Curry's order dismissing the indictment in the United States v. Comey and United States v. James, and flouts no fewer than 3 separate lines of Supreme Court precedent on elementary principles like the role of federal courts, the effect of district court rulings, and the nature of the adversarial system. The bottom line, they write, is Ms. Halligan has not misrepresented anything, and the court is flat wrong to suggest that any change to the government signature block is warranted in this or any other case. So section 1 on page 2, Halligan and Blanche and Bondi write, the dismissal orders in Comey and James do not prohibit or render factually false the United States' continued representation of its legal position that Halligan is the United States Attorney. It goes on to say that Judge Curry didn't say you're disqualified from everything, just you're disqualified from the case that I'm reviewing. Interesting logic there by the DOJ, or illogic. Then on page 6, they write, in any event, this court has no authority to strike Ms. Halligan's title from the government signature block. What do you mean, in any event? What do you mean, just in any event? Even if we were engaged in crimes, Judge, you must countenance them. You can't tell us that she should not be engaged in unlawful or unethical behavior. You're just a federal judge. What the hell is going on here? Because this is what they write, regardless of Halligan's proper title. Just think about those words right there. Regardless of Miss Halligan's proper title, like regardless of if we're committing a crime, this court sua sponte objection to the government signature block on the indictment violates the federal rules of criminal procedure and the principle of party presentation at the core of our adversarial system. The rules of criminal procedure authorize courts to strike surplusage from indictments only upon a defendant's motion. You can't call it out on your own. You have no discretion, Judge. At any rate, there would be no basis to strike Miss Halligan's title, even if the defendant had moved for such relief. Rule 70 operates to protect the defendant against prejudicial allegations essential to the charge or unnecessary or inflammatory words in nature, and her misrepresenting her title is not inflammatory to the defendant. First off, just so you know, offering to strike the name of Halligan is the nice thing that the judge was doing. What the judge should be doing is recommending that you lose your legal license, but the judge offered that as a solution. But also, you don't think it's prejudicial or inflammatory to a criminal defendant for a criminal prosecutor, I'm saying the prosecutor being involved in behavior that is unlawful, exists? That's an interesting argument to make, because I believe the criminal defendant's like, so wait a minute, I'm being prosecuted by someone who's not a real prosecutor? And you think that's not inflammatory? I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds podcast, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds YouTube. Harry, you and I covered this when Judge Novak made the order, and we've been following judges across the country, whether it was in the Haba case, whether it was with that Northern District attorney in New York, whether it's with Halligan, judges saying, Trump, you're appointing fake prosecutors. They're not being appointed and confirmed by the Senate, and they don't have the authorization to be interim. They must go. And here you have the Trump regime saying against the Trump appointed judge, you're out of order, Judge. You're out of order. That was their response to Judge Novak. What say you?
Man, what a tangled web they weave. So they say, as you put it, Ben, well, all they did was dismiss the case. Now, of course, the whole principle of the law of like cases being treated alike would mean that, you know, any other person who's indicted in that district is subject to the same relief. So you're right that Novak's really doing them a solid in a sense, because any defendant can, and many defendants will, bring this exact claim. But that is not all that the judge said. The judge said the appointment is unlawful. So they tie themselves in knots saying, well, okay, so it's unlawful, but that doesn't mean we can't say it. Well, it does mean that if it's unlawful to be the United States attorney, then to write United States attorney, there's a problem. And now, in terms of their really radical position, here's what they say: just because one judge says it, we don't have to follow in any other case. You know, you sometimes hear an aggressive Department of Justice or defendant even saying, well, that's for that district, not for this district. This is the same district. This is the Eastern District of Virginia. And so you can't, this is a case that's been decided by the Eastern District of Virginia. They're on course for a head-on collision, of course, because anybody who's been indicted out of that district is preparing the same papers now, and of course could get the same medicine. And as you say, that medicine would be served against, or who would hurt would be the public, who has, important cases from the Eastern District of Virginia, which does some really big cases, otherwise undone. But the whole tangled up in knots. Well, okay, he just said that and then they would, sort of put it in that it's unlawful to be U.S. attorney. That doesn't mean we can't say she's U.S. I mean, really, it's hard to once you begin to parse it, it's hard to begin to say it with a straight face. So, Lindsey Halligan's, I think, date with justice and the law, like that of three other people in similar positions, as you just pointed out. We've just most recently had in the Northern District of New York the same ruling. You can't, this person was not legally appointed. They've tried to do the same in all of those. Her date with justice, I think, came and went, but the follow-up is surely happening soon. And now another judge we know in a case that was pending, but this case is pending as well. But Judge Brinkema said, what's going on here? And the whole district is really, going to be, I think, not very sympathetic to the claim once a defendant brings it in a pending case. This is yet again an unlawful, a pretend prosecutor has signed this thing, and you can't, you've got to dismiss the case. And by the way, I mean, the judges are thinking about their own time and the justice system through this kind of vanity or obstructionist silliness from the department. You're potentially wasting a lot of judicial resources and time to have these things go through with the U.S. attorney's signature that is bogus, and the hammer's gonna come down, and again throughout the country as well. So it's really the final point to make is just when the department tries to say, well, it's just one district, that's sort of pretending they haven't heard or seen the rulings from every other court that's done it. It's just sheer contrariness and at the cost, of course, of doing justice as they're supposed to do. But the hammer, I think, is going to come down harder on Lindsey Halligan in the pretty near future.
I suppose the calculus here was either, judge, you're right, there was a misunderstanding, she'll resign. And she may have been able to save herself, if she took she shouldn't, but it's possible there was a path there. She frankly lucked out, in my view, that she was disqualified in the first place, because there were other major misconduct that she engaged in with the grand jury that the judges couldn't rule on, that in my opinion were offenses that she could lose her law license for. But because she was disqualified, she actually got a break. Yet these demented humans, I don't know how else to describe them, they keep pushing until you assert yourself to them aggressively. And this is the thing. Lots of people at a human level are not equipped to handle a sociopath who just and just keeps on going and going. It's exhausting. So there is a human reaction sometime to just say, enough. Okay, what do you want? Well, I'll let you have it. But that's how you let these I would say rodents, or these leeches, or cockroaches, like they never stop. Pop, 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 pop. Jan 6, Jan 6, Jan 6, da, 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 da. And they'll keep on going with the lie until they exhaust. You're like, just fine. And you're seeing an example of it here. I mean, to a Trump appointed judge, she should take the L and move on and do something else. But she's attacking a federal judge who just said, you were disqualified by this other judge. No, I'm not. So it's crazy behavior. And we need to, we have to assert our own authority against this crap anyway, Harry. Make sure you subscribe to Harry's YouTube channel, his Substack. You don't have to respond to my rant there.
No. Look, I want to, because they only have one operating speed, right? They can only go into that one, and they do it. Obviously, if you were trying to do something like this, you would delicately try to explain in respect why, but all they can do is insult and disparage the judge who's there, and come out of the box with just trashing everyone. This is the sort of thing that you see from the sort of lowest level, attorneys in a judicial system, and never see until January 2025 from the Department of Justice. That is just, embarrassing itself more and more every week.
Make sure you all subscribe to Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Subscribe to Harry's channels. Right now, go on YouTube, search Talking Feds, and subscribe to our YouTube as well. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.